Hey guys, we're back with another edition of the Best Three podcast. On today's episode, Tori and I are joined by Trent Bryde to discuss his journey through tennis and the lessons learned along the way. Trent reached a career high of 10 on the junior ITF rankings, competing against the likes of Stefanos Tsitsipas, Felix Auger-Aliassime, and Sebi Korda. Trent then went on to have an outstanding career at the University of Georgia and is now the captain of Atlanta's professional tennis team, Intense Atlanta. Without further ado, let's get to it.
Just the coaching, like I've never really gotten to, since I finished up my career, to think the people that really made a huge impact in my life. Will obviously being number one, obviously my
Sure,
family, and then
sure.
Will being number one, who was there with me from when I was, 7 years old all the way to the very end. I owe that guy my absolute life. And then there's other, very few people that made super, super profound impacts. One being you, Tori, made a huge impact on my career, my life. Henry Darko, cannot thank
See,
that guy more than any. I mean, that guy really changed my life in the time that we worked together, as well as Viv Chetri for the short time that we worked together.
right,
And then of course Manny and Jamie when I was at UGA. So like,
right.
it's I don't know if you guys even realize how much of an impact you really, really make because you don't hear it enough and you do need to hear it more. So I think it's like pertinent to start off this podcast, just letting you guys know the impact you have truly made on my life, not just my career as a tennis player,
Sure.
who I became as a person. Because I pretty much spent my life on a tennis court growing up, right? And that was with you, that was with Henry, that was with Will, right? So I owe you guys a lot, and every bit of success I get, not just from tennis, but even in life moving forward, I owe a lot of that to you guys. So I want to make that super, super clear.
And
Man,
that's the beautiful thing about this sport, right? Like that we come through it, especially from a junior standpoint. We were talking about this earlier, Trent. Like we players and coaches, we're in each other's lives for almost like a flash, right? From ages like sometimes it's 10 to 17, and it feels like an eternity when you're in it, but
right.
afterwards you're like, oh, that's a part of life. But having the ability to reconnect, as adults, and
Yeah,
this
Yeah.
this tennis world is so small. Like no one gets forgotten, and we all run into each other at some point down the
that's
road.
right.
And
Absolutely.
it makes this feel that much more special, right?
Yeah,
That's right.
And I appreciate the very kind words, Trent. You were a joy to coach. You were um as I have a very short list of the truly special ones that I had worked with. Especially with one that achieved some of the rare air that you did, but it's trust me, very much appreciated. Um, it was all love, and it was we wanted you to be the best Trent you could be. I tell people all the time, I got into coaching from having had I'm going to say it, a pretty suspect coaching experience from in college, especially. My coaches and juniors were awesome. I mean, shout out to Brent and Kenny Fields. I mean, back in Wichita, Kansas, those guys were awesome. And Barry, their older brother. That's how I got to Morehouse. Was Barry was a basketball and tennis player at Morehouse, and it was one of the ways that I even got down to Atlanta. I felt like if I wanted to coach the way I wanted someone to coach me, I wanted to coach a kid. If they really wanted to get better, I was going to push them.
Hmm.
And I actually had, and this is kind of a small note, and I'll mention this, Alvin, maybe you may not even realize this. I had worked my butt off to try to get ready to play college tennis, right? And playing college basketball. Didn't have much money. So my only way to get to Atlanta was to get a scholarship. And I had saved my money trying to work on my game, and I had saved my money to basically pay my tennis bill. So I'm leaving. I'm walking over to my complex, and I tell the guys, "Hey, man, here's some money from what I owe you, and for all the drills and this and that, and the lessons." And they said, "Th, you don't owe us anything. You owe us a kid that you coach. You have to find a Torrey Hawkins, and you have to pay back with that kid. That's what you owe us."
That's awesome.
And Alvin, I was like, "Well, I guess I got to coach then because I had this debt now,
You
right?
got
I
to pay
had
it
this
forward.
debt,
Yep.
and I had to pay it forward." I remember the day Jackie Jenkins showed up at the tennis courts, and I had some lessons, some kids I was working with, and I said, "I found my kid. I didn't realize that he had a brother, Jermaine. I didn't realize that they had a friend, not related, named Scoville Jenkins. I didn't realize I would do it for the next 30 years. I had no idea.
So you
Right.
paid
But
off
it
that
was,
debt and some.
you know what I'm saying? But I say it to tell you, I was paying off a debt. And to your point, they made a huge impact on me, and I'm honored to have made any kind of an impact with other players. But isn't that what makes this game so special? This is one of the few games where, in my opinion, you will spend that much time with your coach and your team. You will spend that much time traveling, going here, going there. I will see a player at their height. I will see a player at their lowest, and everywhere in between. And often, sometimes it's just you and that player that understand, not a time to panic. He's got this, even though the score doesn't say so. And a time to panic, 5-2. Like, I don't know if he's got this. He's a little suspect right now for him return. I hope this kid goes backhand. And in those moments, though, and we laugh about it, we cry about it, all of it afterwards. But at the end of the day, no one is a bigger fan. No one is as firm of a critic, right, than your coach and obviously your parents, but your coach. And I always felt like as a coach, this is my chance to help get a kid way better than I could have gotten. And if you added those two together, how far could that kid go? I don't know. And so I just say that to you to say you were the embodiment of that in a lot of ways. It was just great to see, and it's always great to see. And you don't get to see it often. And with that, Alvin, I'll let you kick in with
Yeah,
some
well, no, let's
questions.
just go back a little bit. We
Yeah,
briefly touched on the battles that Trent had with Mr. Freestone.
yeah. Good player in his own right, by the
Yeah,
way.
played at
Tech
Tech,
Friday.
right?
I
Very
mean,
Yeah,
good.
like
he
Yeah.
I
plays
remember
like I
that
said,
that one handed
no
backhand
question.
was
Oh,
was
yes,
no
sir.
joke. But that was in 12s, right? Competing at the the fledglings of the Southern level, and
Yeah.
we're all very aware of like where your game progressed to over the next 10 years. But maybe give us a little bit of insight of like from your perspective now that you've had some some time to reflect back on it. What did it take for for you, both from a training aspect, whatever else might be, to go from that level of player to top 10 in the world ITF?
Yeah, it's a good question. Um, nothing immediately comes to me as like something specific with my game, but what does come to me was being at Windward and having guys that were always better than me from when I was 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, 11, 12. Because once I sort of graduated from Brandon Freestone, Patrick Sklinka, it was Jay Chintham, Alex Hearn, right?
Right.
And once you like these guys, all of these guys together, I mean, pushed me so hard because I mean, you know this about me, Tori. I will do anything to be the best. And that was my group that I was with. And those are the guys that push me to be better every single day. I remember, I mean, you know, obviously everyone worked really hard, but I mean, I did some crazy stuff. I mean, I remember, when I was working with Henry and hitting with him every day, he asked me, he said, if I'm going to hit with you every single day, I want you to go out and hit a basket of serves after practice every single day. And do it for like 10 minutes and then always do like second serves, count how many you can do in a row. It would be no indoor courts at Windward. So
Right.
20 degrees,
Yep.
blisters all over my hand. People are like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Even Henry would tell me, like, "It's fine. You can go home today." And I'm like, "No, absolutely not. You asked me to do one thing. I'm gonna do that
I'm
thing."
gonna do it.
And
Yeah.
it was just relentless hard work, right? Like I didn't have the biggest serve. I'm not 6'4". I was a very good athlete and I worked my tail off. Like there was nothing anyone could do to stop me to try and get better every single day. And I think that not only did the guys around me help me get better, but I believe that I made an impact on them too, to that, I inspired them to push harder as well. But I really owe it to the people I was around. Again, like the coaches and then just the players I was around. And then, when graduating from Alex and Jay, I started working at USTA a little bit more and
Yep.
traveled basically the world with Patrick Kipson, who was 130 in the world last year. Sam
Yep.
Riffis, who,
Yep.
won
Sam.
the NCAAs in individuals and team. Vasil Kirchhoff, who's doing really well in doubles right
Yeah,
now on
Vasil.
tour.
Yeah, yeah,
Some great names. So like those guys,
yeah.
I started competing with those guys every single day, and
Right.
they
That
pushed me to
became
get
your new
better.
group. That became your new pod you were training with
That's
and
right.
trying to.
And those guys
Yeah,
pushed me so hard, right? Those guys pushed me so hard because I wanted to be better than them, right? And so I think, for me, like the credit that I would give is just the people I was around is what really, really pushed me to be a better tennis player every single day.
that's well said. And I know those names. Shout out real quick to Patty Squink, my main man Jay
Of
Chentham,
course.
and Huron. I mean, those are some. You brought some names back there. Just downloaded a bunch of memories.
Yes.
Oh
And
man, that was
that's when I was at
you were
Winward
there
with you guys as
coaching
well.
with
I
us.
remember
Exactly.
Skalinka and all those guys. You guys were all like
Yeah.
probably, gosh, like 11 years old at that time. So
Yep.
there were, a litany of players, especially on the girls side. We had a lot of tough girls
Yeah.
in the program as well, your
Right.
sister included.
Yep.
So it's nice to hear that the continuing theme. We've asked this question to a lot of players who have been very successful at the junior level. Like, what did it take? And they all kind of feel the same way. It's like the people you surround yourself with, like that, then in turn work together and push each other. It's almost like the secret sauce, the incubation there.
Percent. And I want to add to that, Trent. Not only were you all competing, you felt like wherever you were, you could have been doing conditioning, you could have been doing a lesson, you could have been in drills. You felt like each court was another leg, a phase of that mountain to climb. If I get
Yep.
from court, if I can go from court 17, right, and I'm working my way up to court 20 where the top court was. If I was on court 13, moving up to 16, up downs were, dude, up downs. I remember you asking one time, no, don't call time yet. Give me 1 minute.
Oh, that only happened one time? Only one time?
Happened all the time.
Yep.
It was almost like he almost could hear me saying, I was inhaling to say last point. And no, no. Hold on. And I'm like, and to see that kind of a grind, people can't appreciate when you got that level of intensity on a per ball basis. It's always those kind of kids that continue to get better. And I think that's it. And they, again, we as coaches we push harder because we know that kid gets pushed harder. Everybody around them gets better as a result. And I got to tell you, man, I mean, seeing you and Mets in that picture last night, I hung out with Patty Squink and Huron at a
Great.
getting some wings about a couple years ago, and it was around the corner from my house. I mean,
That's
and we're
great.
just talking about all the stuff, man, all of the times, and just so many good times, a smile on our face. I mean, there were some days that it bordered on inhumane. You know what I mean? It bordered on
Yeah.
inhumane as far as the treatment of running, but you look back on it, in the words of Huron, you'll survive. You know what I mean? the Russian himself, you'll survive, Harvey.
Yeah.
You'll survive.
Let me ask you this then. So when you're going in, especially when you're moving from like the confines of Windward and that competitive group, and then moving on to the USCA with other players who are coming from other academies, right? And then you guys are starting to travel the world. How did you start to view kind of yourself as a player, the way that you were training versus, the best of the best coming from other countries?
Yeah, sure. Well, first I want to say something real quick that
Yeah,
just like
please do.
just a memory that just came into my brain from you, Tori. Um, in between court 18 and 19, I remember one day you sat myself, Alex, and Jay down in like a serious talk, and you guys were, I don't remember what sparked the talk. I think it was maybe we were doing like maybe it was like six ball doing the runs or whatever, and maybe we weren't working our hardest or something, and you sat us down and you were like, one of you guys is gonna make it, one of you guys is, or you guys are competing against each other, and you just like gave this really inspiring speech to all of us. And I remember just leaving that speech from us three, just being like, I have to be better than these guys. I have to. So I just wanted to bring that up. I don't know if you remember, but it was like,
It was a pretty good group of kids. I mean, each
mhm,
of you, for the record, and for those listeners, I gotta think each of you, for a good chunk of time, were all blue chips. I mean, so this was not a. And when do you get three of you? You know what I mean? All
yeah,
together. You know what I mean? And you all were crazy fast. You all were, and I knew it. I mean, there were. there were
And
times,
also, they were so much better than me. So
and they
I don't want to leave
and a
that out
longer,
either.
and a
They
longer.
beat me down for years.
Yeah. So I think, but that's parts of my point is that I wasn't, and we coached some good kids. Those kids were some of the best that we had, especially in that. So when I knew, right, when I knew I had what I had in front of me, I'm like, dude, you don't know this. I know this, but I've been coaching a little while. This is not normal. This doesn't happen all the time. So you guys have gotta push each other, and get to that next level. And you want to be quick, you beat these three other quick guys. Now you know how quick is. And so that's one of the things that probably sparked it was that, and I knew we weren't yet taking home all the hardware yet at all the nationals yesterday. I'm like, hey, but then we need to get to work. And so that was one of the things where, again, but you had to have kids that loved it and kids that were inspired. I could speak all day, but if I'm not helping you or making an impact on you, or then what does it matter? I'm just talking. You know what I mean? So it was that. I'm glad those kind of, you always wonder, are you getting through as a coach? And this is probably a moment for all the coaches out there that are listening, hopefully, to this podcast. Know that the kids always remember. The kids, all the good ones, always remember, and they are, here they are now. At are you 25 now? 26.
2025.
25, and here they are at 25 telling you 10 plus years later, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
that, man, now that I remember it, it had an impact on me. And that's, man, I tell you, there could be nothing more fulfilling, is to hear that you made an impact.
So
Yeah.
Trent, it's
Well, I
interesting
appreciate
that
that. Yeah.
that your motivational Tory story was probably, I'm gonna say, maybe 15 years like after my motivational Tory story that I always remember from the practice courts. And I don't know if you knew this, but like I was at UTA when Tory
Hmm.
was there back in the day, and it's a small thing about we were supposed to be picking up balls, right? Four courts, one at a time. And we're supposed to be, running. Pick up the ball, run, put it in, pick up the ball, run, put it in. And somebody made the decision to like sneak an extra ball in there and pick up two at a time. And the thing is, Tory didn't say anything about it at the moment. We were almost done. Tory picks up the cart, and this is one of those big boys, right? Big boys, four wheels, picks up the cart, tosses the cart almost a half court length.
I love it.
Do it again.
I
Every
love it.
ball matters. And it's like, okay, all right. And it's just one of those things. We all take away something different, but it's like, the way we do everything, or the way we do anything is the way we do everything, right? And so,
Hmm.
like, coaches are always coaching, always teaching,
And
regardless of the.
instilling values, right? Because
Absolutely,
that is the point that he's
absolutely,
making by throwing the cart and saying do it again,
absolutely,
and also making you guys pick up every single ball first, then doing it again.
right,
It's deeper than
absolutely.
tennis, right? It's
Tennis
like,
is a vehicle. It's just a vehicle for learning
mhm.
lessons in life. It's not really about hitting forehands and backhands.
We were Lifetime. Remember, Trent, he was recruiting you, when you were looking to go to school. And so just talking about how it, I have very, from a coaching perspective, you remember those great classes, those great groups of kids. You know what I mean? And so my earliest memories coaching was B Ray and the Haley and these guys coming through. That was even well before the Jackie's, and Jackie was just on the tail end of that, and obviously then Jermaine and Scope. But I say that to say, you remember those groups. And so I'm comparing, you with Alvin's group back there with B Ray and Jackie. And those are some good times. Chuck Perrin, Alvin,
Oh,
we had
Chucky, yeah, Chucky
some great,
Fresh.
so those are some great time. And then you have that next group. And so even each big group later, you're like, this is a good group. How do you know? Well, because you coached good groups before, you know how they work. You know how they kind of feed off each other. You know what I mean? And that was just so much fun, man. You would get to the end of practice and you couldn't believe where the time went. You were like,
That's right.
can't wait till tomorrow. You know what I mean? We got these
That's
guys again
right.
tomorrow. And that's so it's anyway. I appreciate the trip down memory lane there. You know what I mean? I have a question, Trent, and this is a good one
Yeah.
I think for our listeners as well. You're going from a pretty good 12 to a really good 14 to a top in the country 16. Okay. What are you thinking about between 12 to 14, 14 to 16, and then take it forward into your next couple of years before the 18s? Take me through the mental space because I don't think a lot of times we talk about this part enough in that transition space
Hmm.
when you're going from pretty good to really good and really good to, let's face it, you were the top kids in the country then, to top good in that next level. Where, how did you mentally grow,
Yep.
and what were you thinking about during in those years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say it wasn't, although my trajectory, looked sort of like, I graduated, 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 it didn't feel like that way internally, at least from, listen, I was traveling the world at 14, 15, 16 years old, and I'm like a teenager, right? I don't even
Right,
know, right? It's
right.
like I'm so mature at that age and getting these worldly experiences and trying to figure out who I am as a human being while also competing my tail off in, a third world country where, you don't have hot water and you're just
Yeah,
battling every single day, right? I remember in Peru, I'll bring this full circle, but I remember in Peru, myself, Patrick, and Sam, we were traveling with USTA and we shared a room together. This is in like the heart of Lima. It was so hot there. There was no AC. There was no hot water. Three beds, tiny, right next to each other. Like basically I could hold Patrick's hand. Um, and so what we had to do was we had to open the window right behind us to get like some air in, and all night construction. Like
oh,
like one of those machines that's like beating on the concrete type
right,
of
right, right.
construction all
Yeah.
night long. Yes. And so, I always use that story because it's just like it's such like a great representation of what it really is like to
Right.
travel the
The
world on the
grind.
ITF circuit, the real
Right.
grind. It
Right.
wasn't sunshine and rainbows. I didn't get to like, go sightsee and do all that. I wasn't in fancy resorts. It was not like that at all. It was a grind. It was tough. But that is what made me who I am today, especially that worldly travel from 14 years old, 15. I mean, the fact that I did that at 14, 15 years old with no parent, right? I mean, that really molds you, right? That like there's not much else, that you can't go through when you go through that stuff at such a young age. So I really want to like just credit how much that played a part in my maturity and becoming a better tennis player. When you go back to the States and you can have Chick-fil-A, Chipotle whenever you want, it makes it a lot easier to play, right? So I think like a lot of it was just like, again, there's not like a specific thing that I can really target that like this is why I got better and better and kept graduating, except for relentless hard work. And then just like the things I went through mentally just as a teenager, right? And there were some times that were tough also where I would have long sit downs with Will when I was 16 years old, where not every practice I gave 120%, right? Because I'm just like I'm a I'm a teenager, right? I'm trying to figure out myself, and I'm trying to figure out, one thing I struggled with a lot, and I'm sure you guys will appreciate this, is um when I was probably like 16 years old, I knew I outworked everyone, but I went through a phase where I didn't understand why people could not work hard at all and be the best player that week and win tournaments. And I struggled so much with that internally. And it took me a while to understand the fact that like tennis doesn't owe you anything ever, right? Doesn't owe you anything. All you can do is work hard and put yourself in the best position to win, right? That's
To
all you can
succeed.
do.
Yep.
And
That's all you
that
can
is
do.
the
Yep.
beauty of tennis, man. Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like the way I can handle losses now because I don't feel like I deserve anything, right? All I can do is just work my butt off. And if I lose, I get back up and I do it again because that's what tennis taught me. Like it's such a beautiful thing about the sport, right? If you go to the gym and you work hard, you will get a reward. You will get stronger. You will get more fit. Tennis is not like that. If you work hard, you might go 6 months and not win a tennis match. That's just
And
how it
still
is.
improve. And still be
And
improving.
still
That's
be
right.
getting get better. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. So, like, I think that's such an important lesson just for everyone, either listening or just people, or even like younger folks who may be going through something similar. It was something that I just couldn't grasp. I just felt like I worked hard. I worked harder than everyone else. I deserve to win, even though and that's a great life lesson, and it's a lesson that everyone really needs to learn. And the fact that I got to learn that at such a young age was such a beautiful thing, and it is credit to where I am today.
That's deep, and not only is that inspiring, but that's real. And I feel like the point about tennis not owing you anything is not only profound, it's honest. And
Yeah,
let's be honest, the bigger macro, right? Life doesn't really owe us anything.
that's
We
right.
are not always the the culmination of all hard work.
Hmm.
There's some good things that's happened. There's been some luck. There's been some opportunities that were taken advantage of, and what have you. There's been some help, here and there, but the hard work certainly didn't hurt,
Yeah.
and if it doesn't hurt, then you should probably do a little more of it. And I think that you add all that with more work, buddy. Now you can't. You're a freight train that can't be stopped, and I think that's one of the things that it's funny you mentioned that. Will made a good point one time. You mentioned Patrick Swayze, and he went through a period there where I want to say he had like this streak in junior where he had lost like his dad told me he lost 3 out of the last I don't know, 11 tiebreak matches, right? He had the stats on it. And Will made this point. I thought it was a classic point. Have you been the hardest worker 11 days in a row? There's your 11 tiebreaks right there. He said, I'm sure you've been the hardest worker once, maybe twice. He says, so you look at it that way, you actually got an extra one. You got extra you probably didn't deserve on that one tiebreak.
Yeah.
Patrick was salty. He was like, no, I work harder than everybody. He says, go ask TH. After every practice, go ask TH if you were the hardest worker. First day, he comes over. I was the hardest worker. I said, Patrick, you didn't even get to the top court today. There was at least 4 guys that outworked you today. Okay. Next day, comes back. I know I was the hardest worker today. I ended up on top court. I said, Patrick, I started you on the second court. You just had to stay up. I said, who was on the top court with you? The guy that started on the last court. Oh. Third day. He doesn't even come by. He says, I go, Patrick, I know what you're going to say. I didn't work the hardest today. I'm like, am I going to say that or is that what happened? Here's what happened. I'll see you tomorrow. Day 5. When I tell you this kid comes in like, oh, I hardly worked today. I said, Patrick, you were the hardest worker today.
There
And
you go.
finally. And then I was like, don't you see? This is what Will was asking you to get to. Can you be that hardest worker every day? I said,
Hmm.
that was the point. And he, at that point, Patrick got it. He thought he was working hard for Patrick. And he
Yep.
was. He wasn't working hard in relationship to everyone else. For Patrick, he was working hard. But maybe that wasn't quite good enough. And to your point, and I feel like that's one of the things that some of the best are working on. That's the mindset, and then you add that the Peru experience, right, and the situations that you guys went through, and those are the moments that forge you. I can remember being at some crazy shady futures where there wasn't orange juice, there was some tang, there was some
That's right.
orange drink, you know what I mean, and a
That's
loaf
right.
of bread and some PBJs out there. Hey, that was
That's
breakfast.
right.
That was continental and some cereal and some milk. That was it, buddy. And we're not
Yeah.
all Ritz Carlton out here. This is Harlingen, Texas, buddy. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And just look across the border and just see how lucky you had to have this tang and that cereal right there. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So go
I
ahead,
want
Howard.
to bring those together though, like kind of that experience you had in Lima and the thoughts that you were, thinking about, like I'm outworking everyone here. Why am I not getting, at the time what you thought you were, was due to you? Even from maybe bringing this down to like a tennis standpoint, like those that were in your cohort that you feel like, okay, I'm outworking these people, but maybe they're seeing more success on the court than I am. And I don't know, for the listeners who don't know, like the guys kind of in your range, like your year plus or minus a year, like
Sure.
you've got, the Felix Auger-Aliassime, you got Tsitsipas, you've got, I mean, Jason saying like he's just now starting to kind of see his some success. Higo Gaston, Sebi Korda, Alex Poprin, Mia Marquez Malevich, like no joke players on the ATP tour, but you're right there, trading W's and losses with these guys. What would you say was
5 in
the
the third
thing?
with Tsitsipas back in the day.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
Setting a
remember
break,
correctly,
man.
Yep, setting the break right there.
So what would you say is the thing that like outside of the hard work that kind of like at that age separates those kind of players?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you know, this is when you get to sort of the hard reality of, my dream when I was very young was I want to be the number one tennis player in the world, ATP. That was it, nothing less. That was my goal. And obviously, I had a very awesome career that I'm super proud of. When it came down to that, obviously I continued playing pro tournaments, through the end of my junior career as well as college career. And when it got to sort of the end of my college career, I had a really good job offer, and I had to make the decision to play pro or work. And it was one of the harder decisions I've made in my life. But when I look at tennis objectively, and I look at myself objectively, and I look at Stefano Tsitsipas, Sebi Korda, Ben Shelton, and these guys, I knew that for me specifically, I was a great tennis player. I was very athletic, had a good serve for my height, had great returns, phenomenal backhand, decent forehand. Um, and but I didn't have that one thing that was better than everyone else's, right? Ethan Quinn, one of my best friends, was my doubles partner at UGA in my last year. He's obviously having a lot of success right now, 130 in the world. He's got that one thing. He's got a forehand that, I mean, it is probably top five, top 10, maybe top five on tour, the way it comes off. It's different. It is different. It's something you can't teach. It's an intangible. And so when I looked at my game objectively, I wasn't I'd make deep runs in futures, but I wasn't winning challengers, right? I wasn't Francis Tiafoe, I wasn't Tommy Paul, I wasn't Opelka, wasn't Taylor Fritz, where right out of juniors, boom, I'm like winning challengers, right? Like those guys. That was not me. And so when I looked at my game objectively, I thought that uh if it were in my cards to make top 100, I'm not going to say that it was impossible. If it were in my cards to do that, I think it was going to take 3, 4, 5 years. And so, was I willing
Why do you
to?
say that?
Because I don't
How did
think
you
I think
predict
I
how
would
did you
have
predict it
been.
out like that?
So because just looking at my game objectively, I felt like I was going to be more of like a Fratangelo, Mitch Kruger, um, Tennis Sangren, right? Like
Yeah,
those
okay.
guys that were journeymen, right? They're like proper journeymen. Because I didn't have JJ Wolf's power off the wings, right? That intangible thing. I wasn't 6'5" lefty with a wicked arm like Ben Shelton, right? So like, and again, I'm not saying maybe a miracle could have happened. I could have figured something out in 2 years, top 100. But looking objectively, did I want to spend 3, 4, 5 years, giving up a lot of my life to potentially make it? And so that's the hard reality that you have to face, is that hard work can take you very far. It took me very far, but it can only take you so far. And it is the hard reality that there are intangibles that you must have when it comes to becoming a top 100 tennis player. Sebi Korda has the best feel, like his ball striking skills are out of this world. Doesn't matter how hard I work, I will never have his ball striking skills. It's just what it is. And so I think like, and I hope that's, maybe it's a bit of a pessimistic view, but I don't think it's impossible. There are guys that are grinders that, Kecmanovic is a good example. I mean, obviously he's one of the best counter punchers, but like, but right, but
All time.
yeah, okay, so maybe a bad example, but like, I mean, there are some guys in there that are proper grinders, right? Maybe it's Sebastian Baez, right? The guy's small and he just freaking grinds so hard, right? So it's not impossible, but if you really want to like look at your game objectively and think like, okay, what do I have? What kind of tool that do I have that no one else has or no one else can replicate, that like can't be replicated by hard work? Um, and I think the only thing that I really had was just like, I had some pretty superior athleticism, and but I
Speed
just
was off the charts.
Speed.
Your
I had great
speed was
speed.
absolutely off the charts. Your backhand flying in the wing and your backhand return. I would put for
Yeah.
juniors. I would put top five in the world for sure, and I would put for tour wise easy top 100. To your point, is every part of your game top 100, and at that
Hmm.
point, and that's really where it comes down to. You're also looking at staring down the barrel of a great job opportunity. And let's face it, the top 100 and below don't make much jingle, so you got to look at that for the next 3 to 5 years. If that's what you want, is that what's in the cards to you and the family? And or if you may want to start. So there's tennis makes you make decisions like that. And as we say, tennis doesn't know you anything. You know what I mean? And then what you put into it, hey, that you're rolling the dice. You could have you could have easily made it in 3 to 5 years. You could have easily rolled an ankle going out wide, and and then pissed off you didn't take the job, right? So I always say your time, and your choices, kind of always make you your decisions end up getting you where you are, and so the decisions take you where you were always meant to be. And I feel like that's just it's a huge part of it. You made the right decisions. You maximized every bit that you could. You worked the hardest you could, and I don't look back at any of it with any pessimism. Maybe at that level in the world, maybe a healthy dose of realism, right? To realize that what you did or didn't have, but and maybe what others had. But I think that if I'd heard that from a guy who didn't try, from a guy that didn't make it as far as you got, I'd say, yeah, I don't know if you can say all that. If I hear that from a guy that tried, that did, that played, and let's be honest, COVID, which you haven't spoken to, COVID killed some momentum you had going into and so those pro ranks, you were killing it in that time, Trent, playing some great tennis. COVID and that tour, that you had a bunch of little smaller tournaments.
Yeah.
That was a great run. Had those tournaments stayed open during that time
Absolutely.
frame when you were just hitting stride, and unfortunately, right, everything kind of started over. Things started back over again, and that to me was one thing that really caught you. But I feel that some of the names, man, let's be honest, looking back and 10 years from now as well, Trent, you'll be looking back to say, man, I was in that conversation. Those
Yeah.
guys were great tennis players, but man, I was right there. And you know that those guys felt the same way about you. That's the respect,
Sure.
man. That's the respect that you had for them, for that you earned for yourself. And they were able to continue going. Good for them. You know what I mean? And you're gonna, you and B&G, Cap are gonna continue doing some great things. And those guys may be clients of yours one day as a result of all of this too. So I think that's also the part that we have to look at. I'm 52, I'll be 53 soon. I look at it always from a different perspective now. Like that was just one chapter in this book. I've got so many more to write. And, I'll be I got a great picture on Instagram. Amir Delic, who was one of my all-time favorite college players, he and Bobby were good. They were in that pod like you and Rifus and the Seal were. And so it was Rajiv Ram, right? It was Amir Delic, Brian Baker, and Bobby, right? And Amir was, man, had a 1 that I just wished I had. I mean, Delic's
Jeez,
backhand was
yeah.
just beautiful. I mean, Gaston Gaudio was the only person I know with a cleaner, prettier one-hander.
Hmm.
Uh, just awesome. Rajiv, we used to call nickname Rajiv Rampers because he looked like the
That
Indian Pete
serve, that
Sampras, right?
serve,
Old
man.
Rampers. He had the
Yeah.
serve, the 20. I mean, so this is a pretty good group. And Bates was money. Bates might have been the most complete player out of all of them, right? Bobby got top 50, played out there for a while. I think Delhi broke top 100 here and there. I think he kind of, he went a different direction after a little while, had a great five setter. I want to say with somebody like really good back in, it was either Moya or Fed. Somebody he had a strong five setter, played great first round of the Open, played a good match. Um, Baker could never really get healthy long enough
Get
to
healthy,
just
yeah.
stay where he was, but Bates was money and a great tennis brain. Rampers, Rashid has won a couple of slams, man. A medal, silver with Venus. I mean, the guy's done incredible, and he's been out there ever since. And so, if you had to tell me then who would have the most slams and the most titles, and when I say Rajiv Ram, I'm like, oh God, no. I'm like Delhi for sure, number one. Bobby May, maybe not. Bates, he has a great chance to be out there for 15 years. And it's that old expression: those you think will won't, and those you think won't will. But it's to my point, and each of them are successful with what they're doing now, and they look back on the tennis. Hopefully, all of them with a smile on their face. That whole group you mentioned, you guys are all successful now. You were successful then. Sometimes we let that number system, kind of dictate to what we are. You know what I mean? And at the end of the
Yeah.
day, everything you're taking from it, man, you're gonna. In fact, you're probably reflecting on some times in tennis at some key moments in life and key moments in what you're doing, even with your business now. isn't that really what tennis will always pay you back with? It's that learning of yourself and understanding what you did under pressure and what you did, what you were able to achieve through some work and taking some chances. Dude, that to me is really tennis was your pressure cooker, and to see
It
what you
was.
could do as man, there's not a better pressure cooker of life to really distill and hone who you are as a person than inside those gates and inside those lines, man. It's a
Yeah.
wonderful situation.
I mean, listen, there are times in my career where I felt like I couldn't even handle it enough, right? Because I put so much pressure on myself, hated losing more than any human on the planet, hyper competitive. And sometimes mixing those things together can bring you a pretty stressful life when you're playing tennis.
Sure,
But I
sure.
look at it today and all the things that tennis has blessed me with. And so just for the people listening, I worked in wealth management for 2 years, and myself and a longtime friend of mine, Joseph Gandolfo, he was also a great tennis player. We developed a trading strategy and decided to start our own hedge fund. And the reason I bring that up is because half, if not more than half, of our investors are all connections I made through tennis,
There it is. Yep.
all through tennis. Like,
Pays
and
it pays it forward, doesn't it?
it pays it forward. And what's so
Yeah.
amazing is I look up to all these people so much because they were all tennis players that went through the same thing that are now super successful in their lives as fathers, as businessmen, businesswomen, right? Like in all aspects of life, and they credit it all to tennis. That's one thing that they all have in common, right? Is just what they learned in tennis, they take away. And so I'm seeing it starting to happen in fruition as, I'm starting to have some success in my young career, and I owe every bit of it to the sport of tennis for sure.
That's
You still playing now? Like what's going? Where's Trent Bryde's tennis right now?
Yeah,
How's that
so
backhand looking?
I was just
yeah,
looking
so
for another
hey, the
partner, by the
backhand
way.
doesn't leave. The backhand doesn't
The
leave.
backhand
The
does. Oh,
forehand's a
hey,
little
hey,
shanky, but
hey. The backhands. You get a little older. You don't rotate as much anymore. That backhand might fool you, but
yeah,
yeah. Go ahead.
yeah. Well, no,
Trent's
so
backhand. I
yes.
think he'll wake up in flip flops and then backhand down the line. I mean, I'm worried about his flip flops, not his backhand. You know what I mean? That's just how I see it.
Well, yeah. So there's a startup called Intense Tennis. Charles Allen is the leader of it. He's locally here in Atlanta, I think in Cumming specifically. Great guy, and I mean, they have a full operation. Like they really do. It's not just this small league that they're putting together and doing it for fun. I mean, they raised money and it is professional. It is incredible the thing that they're putting together, and I'm so happy to be a part of. I'm so blessed to be a part of like what their mission and their journey and what they're trying to achieve, which is to entice viewership into a format that is just more engaging, right? Like, tennis, there's obviously watching the top guys is, getting to watch Novak play Alcaraz is special regardless of how long it is in between points. But, when you have guys at the lower level, people don't want to spend time watching it because only there's probably only 25, 30 minutes of a 3 hour match that's actual tennis. Um, and so what Intense is trying to do and what they are doing is they have a format that basically it's constant tennis. You have these 10-minute bolts where you just play continuous points. It's one serve, no lets, right? And so you're just going back and forth, and each point is 1 point. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of 15, 30, 40. And so it's a great format, and I'm happy, very lucky to be a part of I'm the captain for the Atlanta team, alongside Michaela Gordon, who is also a phenomenal tennis player, played at Stanford, played one there, and I believe won a national championship. So, yeah, so we're getting a couple cities together and, making it like a sort of like a world team tennis, but, with a different format that's going to be more
Different
engaging for
format.
fans. So,
Love it.
I'm
Love it.
really excited for it. It's really nice to get out there and train a little bit more. I actually have a tennis court here at my condo, so me and Joseph get out there and practice a good amount, which has been great.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so I'm excited to compete again in that, and I really think, I mean, for anyone watching, like you guys have to tune in. They'll broadcast it on YouTube. JY Bone is doing the commentating. He's phenomenal.
Yeah. And
And so it's just a great, it's just a it's just a great idea, and just really, really happy to be a part of what they're trying to achieve.
I'm looking forward to tuning in. I love that it's happening like that. I feel like tennis is having yet another renaissance, especially
Agreed.
with the newer viewers. And there's so much talk of pickleball, this and that. And pickleball is great in its own right, but I feel like tennis is still, for the purists of us out there that still
Mars.
appreciate tennis, tennis is still the best. And I take nothing against pickleball. I think it's appeal to the masses and it's entry level. It's small barrier of entry to get in. It's awesome for
Sure.
the masses and and if anything, it helps. It's if anything, it's stolen more tennis players than it's brought to the tennis courts. You know
Sure.
what I mean? That's a whole other talk show. But
pickleball is the tennis that people think they're going to be playing when they start playing
right,
tennis. That's how I
Yeah.
feel about
those
pickleball.
and those that don't understand how hard tennis is. You know, I still feel it's one of the hardest sports in the world. I was talking with a couple of former top athletes, and we were talking. Me and Jeff Francoeur got into it about what's harder, hitting a baseball thrown at 98 miles an hour. You know what I mean, or returning a from 90 feet, or returning a tennis ball at 155. You know what I mean, from 80 feet. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? In less time and less space. And he was like, "Oh, you're gonna point there, but I'll never say baseball is not as good." I'm like, "You know what I'm saying?" I said, "You don't have to say
Yep.
it. We just let it linger." I said,
That's right.
just appreciate what I'm talking about." I said, I am not taking any of those World Series rings off you, but today. But let's be honest. When you talk about difficulty, right? I told him, I said, you do 3 out of 10 for the lifetime of your career, you're Hall of Fame. 4 out of 10, you are super special. I
Yep.
said, you make 4 out of 10 on a tennis court, you're terrible. I mean, you miss 4 out of 10, you're
Yeah.
trash. You know what I mean? So
Terrible.
I was like, it's just a different mindset. And so I just say that to say the level of difficulty at any high level game of 12, high level game of ITFs, high level game NCAAs. I mean, let alone the pros. I mean, come on. It's only those that have played enough can appreciate how hard it is.
That's right.
It's ridiculous. It's when you really see it live, and so that's why I'm interested in seeing this format, because anything to keep getting viewership. I wish there was a way to show how hard it is to move track and hit that ball at that speed. Then people would be like, "Whoa!" I mean, remember years ago, Alvin, how the dunk contest? Because I know you're in terms of sports. There was years ago where the dunks weren't as special because the technology could not show slow mo good enough. And it was
Yeah.
only when you could see that dunk slow down that you realized Jordan brought the ball back, cocked it, brought both knees up, and took off from the free throw line, right? You didn't realize all that was happening. Dominique had the double windmill, and you didn't realize how hard the dunk was. And then they slowed it down, and you were like, "Oh, he did what?" Then you understood what he did. It all happened within 2 seconds. Your eye couldn't track it all. But then you start appreciating it now. You see it now. We almost have problems. Like, everything's about the slow mo, right? Because the slow mo helps you see what actually happened. I think the same thing with tennis. I mean, if they literally put a true in action Hawkeye, representation of the ball moving at that speed, and they start you from where you are, and you're like, you see this spot in space that you have to get to
Yeah.
in 0.93 seconds.
And measure it in your head.
Here's a
That's
footstep. And make it and recover the next ball. People were
yeah.
like, "Oh my God, are you
Well, I
for
mean,
like if they did
I've told this
go
story
ahead.
before, but I've taken like Tori's, like Trent, you remember like the 1, 2, 3s, the counting of cadence and all that
Of
stuff. Like
course.
I've obviously we've done it on the tennis court, but I did it once watching Rafa practice, and I was like, oh, I know I can't keep up with that. Like that's fast. I haven't
Yeah.
even gotten out of my and then the ball's already coming back. It's like
Can't even
those
count
guys,
that fast. 1, 2, 3,
I
1, 2,
can't
3.
count that fast. I'm
Can't
out of
count that
breath
fast.
counting that fast.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
they're just hitting up the middle. So it's like if people could understand, like to your point, Tori, like if there was some way to kind of show, and actually, that since you mentioned my employer, we are this is the first year of our 10-year contract with the French Open to cover the French Open for the United States. It'll be on TNT and Max and so on and so forth. But like having that in the broadcast, like even with those like integration with like the blaze pod or something, like yeah, put the blaze pod on the pods on the floor, like let's see how fast this thing lights up and
Yeah.
see if you can keep up.
See if you can keep up.
Yeah,
And
that's a
that's Rafa. You know what I mean? Who was phenomenal. What about you add that to Yannick Sinner and and some of the guys that are banging now? They're like, ooh, buddy, it's
It's only
something
getting
that
faster.
it's
yep.
only getting faster. You know what I
And the
mean?
court's
So
the court's not getting any bigger either. That's the
no
it's
doubt,
it's still it's still tight. It's still tight.
That's right.
it is what it is. Trent,
Uh,
my last question for you.
yeah, go
I know,
ahead.
and we'll let you go. Little Trent's coming along down the road. You're out hitting balls with it. 5 years old. What do you do with him on the tennis court? And this is going to be, it'll seem simple, to make sure he always loves the game.
Wow. What a deep question.
Could be, it could be a daughter as well. Make no mistake. I have one of each.
Well, listen,
Just right while you think about it, I'll give you a little minute here to burn on that one. Like I have a 5-year-old son. He's my youngest. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and I have yet to, for like almost for that same reason. Like I love the game. I'm 42 years old, and I have a lot of guys that I grew up playing with who don't play anymore because they don't love it. And I love this game dearly, and I love it so much that I almost want to protect my kids from falling out of love with it. So like I don't push too hard to like I'm like, hey, you want to go outside and hit tennis balls? They're like, no. I'm like, okay, that's fine. That's fine. Because if you do it, I want you to enjoy it. I want it to be a place that is fun and safe, not a thing you have to go do. So I'm interested to see your that's a very poignant
Yeah.
question because it's
And let me qualify it, because here's where I was going with it. What did Bruce do with you?
so
And I
that's
think
what,
that's
yeah,
that's really where I'm coming from. It what
yeah,
made him, right? What made you love it? With the dad that was a coach, dad that was that was a player,
yeah.
that kept you in it, because at some point you had to get addicted to it, but you had to love it first, right? So that was where I was going with it.
Well, that's immediately where my mind went to was, and this is perfect because I mean, I had the best tennis parents I could have ever asked for. And you guys know better than anyone else. Not all parents are good tennis parents, and probably a majority of them are not good tennis parents. And they drive their child away from the sport rather than to the sport. And what my dad did with me specifically, he obviously introduced me to the game, he taught me the game, and as an immature little kid I did not like listening to my dad. And when it got to that stage, he passed me along to Will, and he let Will take full control, and he did not pressure me. If I didn't want to play, cool, you don't have to play. And I mean, like it almost makes me emotional, like how much support like my parents gave me. I mean, my dad and my mom as well, just relentlessly financially supporting me. And if I wanted to quit the next day, they would say, no problem. I mean, they would of course, want to talk to me about it, but um, I mean, and I can't imagine my dad inside. Yeah, that's actually funny. I was talking to a friend the other day of like, what sport do you want, your kid to play one day or whatever? And I was thinking to myself, like, how hard would it be for my child to play tennis? Because I know so much about tennis, which
Yeah,
is almost like
yeah,
it almost hurts you a little bit, right?
yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
sure my dad was in the same position because he knew so much. And I can't imagine when you know so much about tennis and that your child who you love so much is doing the wrong thing over and over. And when you tell him, he won't listen, right? And so you have to have the humility and you have to have that personality to be able to let go and trust in a coach that, which was ultimately Will, who, I mean, who was absolutely, I mean, who couldn't be more perfect for me,
100%.
and what I needed. So, um, like that's just I mean, my parents were absolutely perfect. I mean, my dad was phenomenal, and I will never, I'll be forever indebted to everything that
Yeah.
both my parents have done for me, and hopefully I can do the same for my children someday, because I would love to introduce them to the sport of tennis, and um, hopefully they can have the difficult experiences that I had, as well as the beautiful
Right.
experiences I had.
Right.
And that's all I would ask for my child, is just to
Yeah.
enjoy those moments and embrace those experiences, because they're really hard. They're really hard, man. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
but gosh, does it make you a better human being tenfold? So, but that's a great question, Tori. That was
Yeah,
a great question.
that's awesome. I've known your dad for many, many years now, and knew that he was a coach. Know he was the director for many, many years as well before he went to his other business. And I
Hmm.
know, and it's funny, Mike Gandolfo. Joseph's dad
Of
was
course,
also a very good tennis player and a pro
phenomenal
player.
player.
Played, and I give those dads and a few more like them. Adeline Flack, obviously, Doug was her dad. Doug was top 50
Yeah,
ATP, and I
yeah,
tell people all the time, I've had coaches who were dads, coaches that were pro players in tennis. And the best thing they did was they trusted me or whoever the coach was in the process. And you can't say more. There isn't a better level of respect for a guy, for dad who knew, who played, who knows as much, if not more, than the person delivering the message on that side of the net. And they allowed that process to happen, right?
yeah,
Bruce allowed us to coach you. He allowed Will to be in that driver's seat with you. He wasn't hanging around the fence. Hey, did you mention this? No. Hey, what about he was just dad. And I think,
yep.
and that you said humility, I think it also took a great deal of trust, but it also took a great deal of he also knew he found the right coach.
That's
And so
so
he
true.
found the guy that he knew would help you the most. Will, you are fiery and hyper and could be up or down. Will was pretty even keel, and he was always very not bad. You hit a good shot, not too bad. That was plenty good right there. Like, he was just in
Yep,
his typical English accent, right? He was
yep.
never got to it. Could have hit the ball a little better right there. Like he was just, it was probably just what you needed. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? And Attila, I did a lot of work with Joseph. I mean, same thing. Attila was just, hey, let's get to work. Let's
that's right.
we hit some more balls. And that mentality was probably just what Joseph needed. So I say that to say the dads they knew enough to know their kid. They knew enough. Obviously, they know the game better than most. But it was, to me, their level of trust was really, really high. And I think all the parents that have trusted me with their kid, especially I say yours and others. Uh, Dixon Owusu, trusted us with my main man Alvin and
Hmm.
Trav back in the day. So I shout out to the tennis dads and moms
Yeah.
out there, but especially ones that played tennis that knew what they were doing, and were happy to take a step back and watch their kid,
Well, both
from
are both
afar.
are really hard jobs, right? Being a parent is
Right,
hard, being a coach is hard, and sometimes
right,
the best thing you can do is try to do your job well and let
right.
someone else
That's
take
right.
over
And
the other
theirs.
one. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But I think you made a really good point, Tori, which was that my dad also knew how great Will was, and you were, and Henry was, right? And I think, just thinking for myself, is like, it's a tough ceiling, because if I have a child who wants to play tennis, I hope you guys are still around coaching, because I need you guys, because you guys set the bar too high. If it's you guys, then
well,
Well,
you guys can have full reign.
Tori keeps moving farther north and north, so it makes it more and
yeah,
more difficult.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be in Chattanooga by the. I'll be in Clemson by the end of this year. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
cool. Well, let's put a pin in it there, and I think that was a lot of fun. And Trent, thank you so much
It's
for taking
awesome.
time out of your day to come
I
kick it
want to
with
get
us
Trent
here.
back, Alvin. When
Let's
we
do it.
are going through the throes of NCAA's, there is nobody better to talk about than the guy that just that gets finished playing. Um, the that we don't talk enough about your college experiences, in my
Sure.
opinion. And all the years
Sure.
you had at Georgia and all in the
Yep.
team. We don't talk enough about college, about the team aspect of college sports. And so you were one of the best. I want to get you back on the show
Love to. Of
and kind of speak to some other things. Please tell the whole family hello. Please
course.
tell Joseph, another very good one in his own right, my main man Gandolfo.
Of course.
that we said hello. And again, we will talk soon. We're not going to say goodbye. We'll say until next time on the show.
That's right.
And thank you again, Trent, for not just all the kind words, but it really made me feel good. But thank you for coming on the show with us. We really appreciate it. We know the listeners will as well.
Wouldn't miss it. I was ecstatic when your name came up on my phone and offered me to do this. So it's a blessing to be on here, and all the successes that I've had and all the people I've been able to be surrounded by growing up. I give every bit of the glory to God, and none of it was done through my own being. It was all through the glory of God. So I'm very appreciative
Amen to
of.
that.
Well
That's
said.
right.
Amen to
Amen
that.
to that.
Well
We can
said.
just leave it there.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Well
sir.
said. All right, guys. Well, that's a fun one. We'll wrap it up there. Best of three. Tori, Trent, thank you so much. We'll catch you guys next one.
Awesome.
Peace.